There are places where terrible things happen once, and then there are places when terrible things happen so often that people begin wondering whether the building itself is involved somehow. The Cecil Hotel became one of those places. Opened in 1927 in downtown Los Angeles, the Cecil was originally designed as a luxury destination during a period when the city was expanding rapidly. Los Angeles was selling a dream back then: Hollywood, fame, money, reinvention. And for a short time, the Cecil Hotel looked like it belonged inside that fantasy. But the city around it changed quickly. The Great Depression devastated downtown Los Angeles. Crime increased. Poverty swallowed entire neighborhoods. And over the decades, the Cecil slowly transformed into something darker. The hotel became connected to suicides, overdoses, violent deaths, disappearances, and serial killers. People died there constantly. Guests jumped from windows. Bodies were discovered inside rooms. Residents described screams echoing through the hallways at night. At one point, serial killer Richard Ramirez, later known as the Night Stalker, reportedly stayed there while actively murdering people across California. Witnesses later claimed he would return to the hotel late at night, covered in blood, while people inside barely reacted anymore because chaos had become normal there. Another serial killer, Jack Unterweger, also stayed at the Cecil years later while allegedly committing murders nearby. And eventually, the building itself developed a reputation that went beyond crime. People began saying the hotel felt wrong. Not dangerous, wrong. Guests described oppressive hallways, a heavy atmosphere, a feeling of being watched. Some refused to stay there again after a single night. Others became obsessed with the place. And then in 2013, the Cecil Hotel became connected to one of the most disturbing internet mysteries of the modern era. A 21-year-old Canadian student named Elisa Lam checked into the hotel while traveling alone through California. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Elisa was intelligent, creative, and active online. She wrote openly about emotions, identity, loneliness, and mental health struggles. Friends described her as expressive and thoughtful. She had also been prescribed medication for bipolar disorder, something that became an important part of the investigation later. But during her stay at the Cecil, Elisa suddenly disappeared. Days passed without answers. Then guests inside the hotel began complaining about the water. Low pressure, dark-colored water, a strange taste. Finally, hotel staff inspected the rooftop water tanks, and inside one of them, they found Elisa Lam's body. But what transformed the case from tragedy into worldwide obsession was not only her death. It was the elevator footage. Security cameras captured Elisa inside one of the hotel elevators shortly before she vanished. The footage still feels deeply unsettling, even today. Elisa presses multiple buttons rapidly, steps in and out of the elevator repeatedly, peers into the hallway as if someone is standing there. At one point, she hides against the wall, almost like she's trying not to be seen. Then she begins making strange hand gestures towards something outside the frame, something the camera never shows us. And throughout most of the footage, the elevator doors refuse to close. When Elisa finally walks away from the elevator, she disappears forever. The video spread across the internet almost immediately, and people became obsessed with one question. What was Elisa Lam reacting to? Officially, investigators later concluded her death was accidental. Toxicology reports suggested Elisa had not been taking her prescribed medication consistently, and authorities believed this may have triggered a psychological episode connected to bipolar disorder. According to that explanation, Elisa likely reached rooftop herself during a stage of confusion or psychosis, before accidentally ending up inside the water tank. And for many people, that explanation was enough. But not for everyone, because the Cecil Hotel already carried decades of death surrounding it, and the elevator footage itself feels almost impossible to watch without sensing fear in Elisa's behavior. Not confusion, fear. She does not look lost. She looks like someone reacting to something just outside the camera frame. Over time, theories surrounding her death exploded across the internet. Some believed another person was inside the hallway. Others believed the hotel staff knew more than they admitted. And many people became convinced Elisa encountered something inside the Cecil Hotel itself. Something tied to the building's long history of violence and tragedy. Maybe that sounds irrational. But the unsettling thing about the Cecil Hotel is how consistently people describe the same feeling after entering it. Oppression, paranoia, unease. As if the building absorbed decades of suffering until the atmosphere itself became contaminated. Even now, the footage of Elisa Lam remains one of the internet's most disturbing mysteries, because nobody watching it feels completely comfortable with the official explanation. And maybe that's why the Cecil Hotel continues haunting people long after its doors closed. Because deep down, many still believe Elisa Lam was not alone in that hallway. That something inside the hotel was watching her from outside the elevator, waiting for doors to open.